Welcome, 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 everyone. Big news. We have a retreat coming up June 10th through 12th online. And also, we have an in-person retreat at the Kripalu Institute in July. So, online retreat in June, in-person retreat in July. If you sign up for the in-person retreat, you can come to the online retreat for half price. You just have to let me know. In addition to that, there's going to be a couple of days at the end of the month where the schedule is going to be interrupted because I'm going to be moving. And so please just look at the schedule for that. The Facebook updates, as well as the website, should have it all posted. Okay, I think that's all the announcements. I do hope you can come to the online retreat coming here in June. And please sign up in advance because I'm going to be traveling those first couple weeks of June, and I won't be so readily available if there's a glitch with technology and that type of thing. Okay. So please, why don't you, I invite us all just to close our eyes. Feeling into the body, giving yourself permission to relax deeply and fully. Right away, I'm going to ask you, who is it that's here? The here and now. That is awake, aware, and radiantly alive. So this is nothing we think about. This is something we experience directly. Who is it that's here? That hears the sound of the bird. Who is it beyond name, beyond form, beyond age and gender? Will you join me in the recognition of your innate divinity? And so I will welcome you to satsang. I invite you to further relax the body and the nervous system. Relaxing, relaxing, relaxing. Feeling and experiencing that which is beyond the body, beyond the thinking mind, beyond the emotional nature. Just gently acknowledging that there is something here right now. That is divine. Absolutely mysterious. Something that knows that you know in regards to the unknown. Something here that knows that you know in regard to the unknown. So acknowledging the vast, spacious, silent nature of your being. Now, for some of you, you notice the silence outside of you, the silence of the sky, the silence of the earth. But I invite you to experience the silence of yourself, your consciousness. And to feel the expansive quality of it. The freedom. The great freedom. And we can acknowledge that there's a human body here, human mind, human emotional nature, character. But in this moment, I invite you to notice that which is beyond all that. There's a freedom here, a silence, a spaciousness. Beyond the human. Perhaps you can see that the human arises within this space. The human arises within this space. The thoughts arise within this space. The freedom, the spaciousness, the radiance, the knowingness is first. And the human is second. Not the other way around. A lot of us tend to get those two mixed up. We honor, we validate the human first. And the divine, well, maybe some of the time. And I invite you to acknowledge your divinity first. To expand, inhabit this divinity that you are. And from this space of divinity, witness and smile at the human, embrace it, not getting lost in it. And so I invite you to open your eyes if you like. I mean, keep them closed too. You're feeling real comfortable. This spiritual path has everything to do with where you identify. Where do you identify? Do you identify with the one who's hurt and broken, the one who's confused, distorted? Or do you identify with the big mind, your timeless nature? Do you identify as a character, as a gender, as an age? Or as this immense presence? When you identify as consciousness itself, well, there's great freedom in that. Great freedom. If you identify with being a person in a particular situation, in a place and time, with some conditions or conditioning, limitations, well, there can be a great deal of suffering in that. And not that one is right and one is wrong. There's just different ways to live. Like I could have chosen to be a rock and roller for this lifetime. I could have chose to have that as a lifestyle and an identification. I chose something different. And so what do you choose? Where do you choose to identify? This this weekend I went out to the desert and I went out with the family. It was a couple families. We went out there together, and it was just so beautiful. Sky was so blue. And the cliffs were so just red and purple and so beautiful. And, I could have been out there thinking, oh, this is going to be my last time in the desert for a little bit. And I'm really sad. And I'm sad that I can't climb and because of what's going on with my body and this and that. But I just sat out there in the desert, just like an empty monk, just so happy seeing the absolute beauty of the big blue sky, the red rocks, and a little, we were on a river, but if you're on the East Coast, you wouldn't call this thing a river, you'd call it a creek. Here in the Southwest, a river, a lot of them you can walk across, which is silly. In the middle of the night, I was just laying there. It's kind of awake. It's like 2 a.m. or something. And I heard this clap of, like at first it could have been a gunshot. And then I realized, or I thought, oh, this is thunder. Like, what's thunder doing? Because there was no clouds or anything and there was no rain. And it kept rumbling. It was this new sound that I hadn't heard before in my life. And just sitting there and the earth was shaking a little bit. Like, what is this sound? And so there was this peace, this silence that I am. And I heard this new sound that I'd never heard before. Again, it started off like a loud crack, like someone shooting a gun, and it sounded like thunder, but I was looking up at the sky. There's a big bright moon. The moon was so bright that it was making the stars disappear, and the cliffs were so lit up. It was just exquisite. And it was a rock slide, like one of the cliffs was collapsing in this big pile of rocks, like a tremendous amount of rocks that fell off the side of a cliff. It's just so beautiful. It's so beautiful. You hear this just massive, it's like earth shaking sound. Arising in the from depths of silence. When you're awake, you really witness life. You experience it fully. In such an exquisite way. I was just utterly shocked all weekend, just how beautiful this earth is. I started the weekend with a little bit of human fear because there was a new fire that started in the town I'm living in, right on the edge of the town. And of course, as you know, as a human, we say, "Oh, no fire! Like, what's it going to do to me? What's it going to do to my home? What's it going to do to my health? What's it going to do to my community?" Again, like these are normal thoughts, but when we have these thoughts, even just a simple rational thought, like when we're arguing with forest fire, it creates limitation, it creates suffering in our consciousness. Whereas when we just see things as they are, like if you live in the West right now, it's just, oh, fires are a part of life. They're a part of life. Like rain is a part of life in the East. And so it's a great question. Can I accept what's here fully without fighting with it? And of course, if there's something that you want, you feel called to fight with, can you create some change with it? Can you create some change? I don't even think there's anything wrong with fighting. It's just, you have to pick your battles. You have to pick your battles here on planet Earth. For a moment, there was a part of me that was, feeling sad that I'm going to miss the Southwest because all just the immense beauty here. Then I realized, when you're awake, you see beauty everywhere. I've walked the streets of New York City and just been amazed at the absolute beauty, the expansive nature of the skyscrapers. The same expansive nature as the mountains and the deserts I look at. The ocean I'll soon be looking at. In the spiritual path, it's a game of perspective. Okay, so a couple questions were emailed in. I think I'm going to hop into those. If anyone has a question, you can raise your hand. You can put it in the chat as well. Okay, here's a question from Nick, I believe. Hi, Craig. I have a question about attachment. Boy, it's funny. In spirituality, there's just so many dirty words, like everything is bad in spirituality. like that's how it's perceived. Like we have these old monastic teachings as we're not allowed to desire, we're not allowed to be attached to anything. And it is true, the more you hold on to and the more attached you are to desire, the more you'll suffer. And that's true to some degree. Like if I'm crazy attached to my home and my location, and I have to leave my location, I'll suffer. But if there's an inner fluidity, an inner flexibility, and you can just enjoy whatever food is in front of you, things are much more easygoing. Okay. Hi, Craig. I can't talk. Hi, Craig. I have a question about attachment. Despite my awakening, I still have a large appetite for the material world and still have attachment to my image and things of the material world. The attachment seemed to disappear for a period of time, but now they are back. And the most noticeable difference is that it's much more painful now that I know things in the world can't satisfy me. Yeah, that's interesting to say. It's much more painful now that I know things in the world can't satisfy me. So let's start with that. It's like, how many of us believe that things of the world, how many of us still believe that things of the world will satisfy us? Like, do we still play that game? That things of the world will satisfy us? This is a great question. I think most of us probably believe that if we get the perfect partner, that will satisfy us. Terry's right. Yeah, like chocolate, the perfect chocolate. I can tell you, I was camping this weekend and I had the most delicious piece of chocolate I have ever had in my life. And I'm a chocolate freak. Like I've visited chocolate shops in France before and had like exquisite chocolate, and shops in Belgium and Switzerland. And I mean, here in the US, I'm like a nut about some real high-end organic fair trade chocolate with no sugar in it. That's just so delicious. But my Lord, I had the best chocolate of my life this week. And I was hooting and hollering about how good this chocolate is. And so is that bad? Is that wrong? Like, am I crazy attached to it? No. But am I going to go find a bar of that and buy it and eat it up? Absolutely. Absolutely. And again, like in this spiritual world, because so much of our modern spirituality comes from a monastic spirituality. So our spirituality in 2022 is based almost entirely on monastic traditions. Definitely the Buddhist path, the yogic path. So much of the Christian path and Catholicism is based around renunciation, and it's somehow bad or wrong to be human. I look at it quite differently, tantrically, or just from the perspective of God. If you imagine being God, the absolute, being vast, spacious emptiness, all alone, say at the beginning of time, I imagine the reason God created the world so God could experience sense pleasure, could experience life, could experience birth and death, could experience learning how to play guitar, rock climb, or make love, or whatever it is. to experience it. And so, I don't see the material world as wrong or being attached to it. I mean, heck, if you're going to live in a house, why not live in a nice house? If you're going to have a body, like, let's have that thing be in tip-top shape. Like, let's take care of this thing. And so, Nick, like, I see no problem in being attached to your body, to your mind. I mean, the only real way relationships work, like long-term romantic relationships, if there's some good, healthy attachment to it. And the problem is when it's unhealthy, when you want something you can't have, or you're not supposed to have, or it's not the time just yet. Like, I would love to have perfect health right now. I just don't have it. And so I look at God and I see, oh, like, I could argue with God, say, this isn't fair, this isn't right. I could look at God and say, maybe you're trying to teach me something or show me something. I'm certainly doing every therapy possible to heal, but I also know that, sometimes God takes us through some trials and tribulations, and that's part of the game. Because God is actually attached to you learning something in this incarnation. God is attached to you growing in a way that you might not yet understand, or evolving in a way you might not understand. So the teachings around in Tantra, we experience life fully, but we don't get lost in it. Like, we enjoy it in the moment, but we don't get lost in it. We don't hold on to it for dear life, because we know that everything that has a name will come and go. Everything that has a name will come and go. Sometimes the quickest way to awaken out of desire is just to, eat all the chocolate you can, and then you realize, oh, this doesn't really, this doesn't liberate me. This doesn't give me, like, ultimately what I want. It may give me a good experience in the moment. Like, at the end of the day, what do you actually want, Nick? Do you want to be free? And if you do so, then we want that more than we care about the other things. We get our priorities straight. Me, I hate to say it, but I kind of always had my priorities straight. Spiritually, I just knew what I wanted, and I was willing to pay for it. It's just like if you want a Mercedes-Benz, like, you have to be willing to pay for that thing. You have to be willing to pay for that red, shiny car if you want to drive it. And for me, I just put spiritual awakening first. And the thing about when we put spirituality first is we're basically putting happiness, like the ultimate happiness first, the ultimate healing first, the ultimate liberation first. And again, it doesn't mean you can't have girlfriend, partner, boyfriend, husband, whatever. It's like, doesn't mean you can't have a family. I mean, I certainly do. And so we have to be careful. Like, a lot of times when we make ourselves wrong for having human desires, like that creates a whole this web of confusion that we can spin in forever. Can you realize what you are, that what you are is freedom? And then from a place of freedom, Can you allow yourself to be human and have a human life? I think that's what God is doing with us here. It's inviting us to realize ourselves as divine. And then from this place, have a human life. And so, Nick, don't make yourself wrong, but if you truly know this, I know things in this world can't satisfy me. Like, if you know that, then don't hold on. Don't hold on to things that can't satisfy you. But again, no one's telling you have to be a monk either. Like, most of us have to pay rent to live here on this planet. Okay. Let's hear from Terry. I'm just going to remind everyone, I invite questions to be short, clear, and direct. So think 1 or 2 sentences. And it's helpful to get really clear about what is it I'm asking? What is it that I'm asking? Okay. Hi, Terry.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yeah, good to see you.
Okay. Ever since awakening, which was like 4 years ago, whatever that was, there's been this split, like you talked about choose an identity. I feel stuck between 2 horses. Like, obviously there's this bigger space, there's peace, contentment, and within that there's this small operating thing called the mind, but I don't let go of the mind, and so there's this back and forth,
why
constant confusion.
So
there's constant confusion, and the mind wants to understand.
good.
And I can't make it let go of that. I mean,
Good.
Obviously, when I say I'm speaking from the mind. It's
Sure.
just so confusing.
Sure. So what will understanding do for the mind? Like, imagine if the mind could understand, what would it give it? Like, what should
Nothing,
it feel
because,
into?
well, I don't know, some kind of a place to stand, some kind of concreteness, a grasping, I don't know, it's like it wants to control, and there's you can't. And so it's
Good. And so I want you to imagine
I don't know
this.
how to relax,
Okay, good. So
just,
that's it right there. The mind wants help relaxing. That's what it's really
okay.
about. That's what it's needing.
Yeah.
It's saying that it wants to control, but like you see clearly, you can't control life. And so then if that's the case, then it's like, well, what does the mind need? It needs help relaxing. And so if we just look at the human nervous system, if there's something within you trying to control, it's because there's somewhere in our body that is afraid.
Yes, definitely. Every time I keep having these experiences where there's a moment that I feel like things are going to open up hugely, like I'm going to fall off the cliff, or I'm watching the ego dying and freaking out. And then like part of me starts praying, please let me go, please let it go, please let it go, please let go. And then I realize I'm in division again because I'm praying to God, but I am God. And it's like, what is going on?
So your body, mind will dissolve when it's met with a total love.
But
if
this
you
is
try
the
to
part
take
where
it, if you try
I
to
try
take
to
it and push it
visualize
off,
that.
so love isn't something we visualize. Love is something we find in our heart.
Yes.
And so you spoke about this piece, and I think you spoke about expansion in the realm of awakening. And so there's another type of awakening where we awaken to love, and this love naturally embraces the mind and the body. And in the process of that, division falls away. So until then, we're going to have a sense of division. So there's a part of you that feels outside of the realm of love and that doesn't feel held. This is very, very common on the path, that we tend to wake up in more of a transcendent way first. And then we have this schizophrenic experience where we're like, I'm really awake and then I'm really not, or we're just witnessing the human and the human's still fighting. There's this war, and everything gets real nutty and actually can become even more divided than how we were before. And so the pathway to healing this is always through love. So love is the great dissolver.
But I've been meditating on the heart constantly, but I don't understand how to, because the mind, I can't find the mind, but I want to send that message of acceptance and love, but I don't know how.
So when you said you can't,
like
so when you said you can't find the mind, I want you to find the place in your body where you feel fear and the desire to control. And that's the place that needs to be loved.
Okay, right here.
Yeah.
Okay, so
it tends to be the throat chakra. So the throat chakra, very interesting chakra. It divides the mind and the heart, the mind and the body, the transcendent one and the embodied one. And so the throat chakra, like this place here, needs to be loved. And so we breathe into that, we relax there, we soften there, we melt there, we hold it, we gently soothe it, reminding, hey, it's okay. It's safe to let go. There's no danger. There's no boogeyman coming to get us. And if we start to feed our throat or our body, our humanity, if we start to feed it spiritual teachings about ego death and ego annihilation, and all this nonsense, it's going to freak out and it's going to fight more. But if we just breathe into it and soften and open, and I want you to imagine just trusting. So this is the energy of love and the energy specifically of trust and opening. This is going to be the doorway. And so you play with this, okay?
Okay, I feel like I keep having the same conversation with you.
That's okay. Listen, this is a big deal.
It's gonna hit me.
It's gonna start to shift, and the more loving and the more sense of inclusivity you have toward your human self, the quicker it will go. But if you think the human self is bad or wrong or shouldn't be here, it's going to take a lot longer. But the more you love it, the more quickly it's going to come into unification.
Okay. Thank you.
Of course. Good to see you, Terry. Yeah. Okay. And this is true with everyone. Like, we all have to face these places. And that's one of the things that spiritual awakening does, is in the beginning, Like at first it's exquisite when we first wake up. And then that awareness starts pointing out all the places inside where we're divided, where we're confused. And it's like, hey, I need you to get to work loving yourself and including yourself and being compassionate toward what you are. And, a big thing that this path is going to invite us to do is to love all of our demons, all of our attachments, all of our points of confusion, all the wounded parts, the scared parts, the parts that are arrogant and think it's the best. And we have to love it all. Because love is the great unifier. Love is the great healer. Love is actually the great dissolver. And again, I always go back to the metaphor of a crying child. The child is crying and you embrace it. They quit crying. Like they calm down, they dissolve, and they melt, they merge into their mother. We're inviting the same thing within our own consciousness. Okay. Catherine.
Hi. I feel like my question is very in the vein of this. I became Dr. Me on Monday, and
I'm sorry. Should I be calling you Dr. O'Neill now?
no, I mean,
apologize.
if you want, oh no, please don't feel any kind of obligation to ascribe that title to me. But I absolutely crushed it. My defense went in like 30 minutes. It generally takes an hour, and they had no corrections on my thesis. They're like, oh, it was beautifully written.
Yeah, good for you.
Yeah, but now that happened, I've been feeling like nothing but disgust this week with myself, like these waves
Why?
of like shame. And I've been trying to go inside and like meditate and figure out what it's all about. And even as we were having this conversation, I was just like trying to send love, like you were saying as you were talking to Terry, towards just like these waves of like wanting to turn inside out. And if you had anything to kind of like speak to
Well,
that.
let's feel into that. So, like let's say just in your professional life, you had a big step forward this week, and we congratulate you. So that would be a time where you'd normally celebrate, relax, and you'd be like, all right, I made it. Boy, that was so much work, and I'm so happy to be done, and now I can rest and enjoy some of the fruits.
Mhm.
But then you said shame came forward, and so like, what is that about? Like, what's the shame trying to tell you? Or what did you like? What was the feeling that came with the shame?
Oh, just like feeling like I wanted to vomit and like hide and
Because why? I wanna
uh
I wanna hide because why? Like,
I think I'm afraid of humiliating my family.
you just became like a doctor, so how would you humiliate your family?
Um I had like experiences where they would put me down for my success. Like a lot of those experiences are like kind of like the you aren't like don't get cocky and like don't get too big for your britches kind of a
Mhm.
thing.
Yeah. What if your britches just fit? Like you did your dissertation, you passed it with flying colors. Like, how about you just wear the britches? And because it seems like you're repeating a behavior that I think you're saying your parents used to like project this behavior on you, where they blame you for your success or something, or attack you for success.
Yeah, I think it was both verbal and nonverbal attack. Yeah.
Yeah. So did they do that this time?
No, I mean, I invited them, which was a big step because we barely talk, and then I just hid after because I was so afraid.
Okay.
They were supportive, but I really just ran, and I
Okay.
haven't
So
tried.
let's stay in reality here. So this part of spiritual awakening is living in reality. So in reality, your parents came out, it went well, you passed, they were supportive.
Yeah.
Okay. So can we simply stay with that? And it seems as if there's an aspect of your human nature, which is built out of habit, which is saying, okay, now's the time for me to feel bad. And so no one was making you feel bad. And so you said, okay, I'm gonna make sure that I do feel bad because I'm going to repeat the habit here. And so if we want to be awake, we have to say no to that habit and yes to the truth. And the truth is you bought some britches and they fit. Like, that's the truth. It's real simple. Like, your britches fit. They don't have to be too big. They don't have to be too small. No one needs to be humiliated here. And can we stay in the truth? Can we stay in the truth? And sometimes the spiritual path has like a lot to do with like neurobiology, where like we have these neurons that just keep firing the same thing over and over again. And when we choose to be awake, we say, oh no, like, I'm not going to continue repeating the past. I'm going to create a present moment in alignment with the truth. And sometimes it takes a little bit of effort in the beginning to say, no, like, I'm not going to do the shame thing. I'm going to smile because what's happening is good and I'm happy. And I'm going to allow myself to be happy. And sometimes we have to retrain ourselves that it's okay to be happy. We don't have to live in the past. And so the wheel of samsara is that it's a wheel, it's a habit. It just goes around and around, repeating the same thing again. And so we're saying, okay, I'm going to step off that wheel. And normally it takes a little bit of effort to step off that wheel. Sometimes when you step off that wheel, you know, there's like these neurological pull to get back on that wheel. And we have to tell ourselves, no, like, no, I'm not going to do that. I stepped off it. I'm choosing to step into, I'm having a lot of fun, these britches. Like, I'm choosing to step into these britches. Like, I like these britches. They fit. And so let's own them. Let's be them. Let's land here in the here and now. And please, by all means, like, if you feel like a lot of shame coming forward, I encourage you not to believe the voice of shame, but to meet that part of us with love. And part of meeting us with love is like, you see that little girl inside and you say, sweetie, I want to show you a new life where you are honored. You're celebrated for your success. You're celebrated. So let's course correct you. We're going to celebrate you. We're going to say, bravo. Bravo is what we're going to do. Is we're going to say, bravo. Like, what, if we're in England, we'd say, well done. Well done. and so to soak that up and to enjoy it, to smile, you're like, yeah, like, I did it. And allow yourself to be happy.
It's really scary to be big.
Listen, it is scary to be big, but you know, I encourage you to get used to it. Because Kevin, you have a big presence. And so if you argue with that, you're going to really suffer. If you make yourself small, it's going to just feel like garbage, you know? And so sometimes you have to, well, you just gotta stand in it and let it burn for a little bit. And then you realize, oh yeah, I can totally do this. I can totally do this. I can totally do this. And again, like, this is God's will. This is God's plan for you. God wanted you small. God would have given you a different type of soul. But God gave you a really big soul and a bright light. And so get used to it. Get used to it. Learn to drive this big car. Good to see you, Catherine.
Thank
Good to see you.
you.
Much love. And congratulations, truly. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. All right. Well, a lot of questions tonight. Some new people here. People I haven't spoken to in a long time. Is it Brianna? And again, just because of the time, I'm going to invite everyone to do short, clear, and direct questions. Okay, let's hear from Brianna.
Hi, Greg. Can you hear me?
I can. There you are.
Hi. So I think my question probably slipped away. It was kind of forming earlier. Mostly, I think I just wanted to say hi.
Yeah, Brianna, where do you live?
I live in South Florida right now.
In South Florida.
Yeah, I moved here from Alaska about 3 years ago. We spoke when I was in Alaska.
Okay. Oh yeah. Yeah, that's a while ago, huh?
It was a while ago.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I bet you got a whole new life in South Florida.
Kind of.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Anything you want to share or ask, or it just totally disappeared?
No, not totally. I have a lot going on in the throat.
Yeah.
A lot of grief in the heart.
Yeah.
A lot of fogginess in the head.
Yeah.
And sometimes some sensations in the brainstem. So
yeah. So one thing I can tell you
yeah.
that'll be helpful with that. Have you ever studied the teachings of Osho?
No, but I watched a documentary on his whole cult recently.
So let me ask you. So the documentary, I loved it. It was crazy and wild. Do you remember the time during the documentary? It's been a while. I saw it when it first came out, but where people were kind of like, there's a bunch of people in a room. I want to have some fun here. Like a bunch of hippies, like spiritual hippies in a room, jumping around and like moving their body like this and throwing their arms all over. Do you remember that?
Yeah, there were scenes. I remember those scenes.
Yeah. So that's called Osho's dynamic meditation. Like that would actually be really helpful for you, is if you just put on some music that you enjoyed, maybe some type of trance music or dance music or spiritual music, and allow yourself to dance and really to move your spine, kind of in a wild way, especially like this. And that'll help the energy, like the grief that's stuck in your heart, kind of come up through the throat chakra and help it to come out your head. And it's also helpful just to throw your arms around, just like a wild hippie at Woodstock. And I'd encourage you to play around with that, like doing that for, I don't know, you can start off like by doing it for 3 minutes, but I'd do it for 15 minutes, for 20 minutes, spinning around, throwing your hair a little bit, moving the neck a lot. And it'll really help this energy, this energy of grief that's stuck, and the energy stuck in the throat, to start to really empty out of you. And it doesn't, like, you don't need to think about like what it is that makes, that has brought up the grief. You don't have to think about your life. You don't have to think about, just to feel it and to dance.
You think it could also be anger and tie into the lower area, maybe down in the abdomen?
100%. Like you should.
I feel that starting to vibrate right now.
Yeah, yeah. And so you should expect some anger, some tears. Like we have a lot of fun here, like maybe some growling and hooting and hollering
Yeah.
and screaming, and but to really allow yourself to be like totally uninhibited. And see, like the throat chakra is like the great inhibitor. It keeps like the id kind of repressed within us. And it's like, oh, I can't let that out. I'll go crazy or it'll be too much. But I encourage you just to play with it a little bit and let yourself be free. And, you know, like if you live in South Florida and you're hanging out by the ocean, you'll see sometimes the ocean is just completely glassy, calm, and clear. And sometimes it is just as wild as can be. And when it's wild, it's just saying, I have a lot of energy and I need to release that. And it's going to release it with pounding waves and wind and intensity. And, you know, it's going to be throwing that, you know, like that salt mist, the salt spray, just, you know, miles inland. And again, like, the earth, when it has too much energy, it starts to erupt, it starts to explode. Little kids, when they have too much energy, they melt down, they have fits, but afterwards often they feel a lot better. And as a human being, as a mammal, it can be helpful to have a practice to really just vomit some of that energy out, let it empty out. And then afterwards, just notice like, oh, my mind is so clear now, so empty, so peaceful, after I've had like a great release, a catharsis. And so you might just play around with that, and you can play around with the intensity. And like, of course, you know, there's therapy and all other kind of things to do. But sometimes it can be helpful just to have like a little activity, like dynamic meditation is what Osho called it. And there's YouTube videos on it too. And there's all kinds of other ways. Like another thing is like you might do Wim Hof's breath, or like holotropic breathing, or transformational breath. These are all just really intense breaths. Like, and when you're doing this, again, it just moves a lot of energy, opens that throat chakra and gets like a lot of this repressed energy just out of us. And again, it can be quite helpful and liberating to do that. And, you know, it's just something to play with a little bit, something to play with. So anyways, so good to see you today.
Thank you.
Yeah, much love. Okay. Let's hear from Mallory. Mallory, are you here?
I'm here. Yes.
Hey, Mallory, good to see you.
You too.
Boy, it's funny. We've spoken a bunch, and your hair always looked like really dark brown, and today it looks blonde.
I got it highlighted.
Oh, you did get it highlighted. I didn't know if it was just different lighting today or something. Okay.
I did. Yeah. Needed a change.
Okay. All right. Yeah. Yeah. How about it? Okay. So, what's on your mind?
Yeah. So one of the things that I've been dealing with this week is like a block of release. So it's kind of tied into everyone's questions. And it's like when I want to cry, or even when I like start to experience joy, my body just like shuts down.
Yeah.
And I don't know how to move past that.
Yeah. Yeah. So, well, let's play along a little bit here. So if you close your eyes, and let's say if you can touch into that sadness, and everyone can do this, just feel into your body and just see if you're carrying anything. And if you touch into that sadness, and if it doesn't immediately begin to move or release, I invite you to ask that sadness what it needs. Like, what do you need? And so you tell me with your eyes closed, what does it tell you?
To be accepted.
To be accepted. Yeah. Yeah. And so you can ask like, more specifically, like what would be helpful? Like, have you been fighting with the sadness or arguing with it or trying to get rid of it? Or you've been trying to force the process?
Both denying and trying to force.
Yeah. Yeah. And so it's, it's telling you like, hey, you're not really seeing me. You're denying me. And then you're trying to force me to hurry up and leave. And sometimes sadness is really slow to come out of us. And it just wants us to just sit with it, like laying in bed, holding it, or walking with it in nature. And sometimes it needs to go slow in its release. Like people get real excited about big cathartic releases, like I was speaking about a moment ago. But there's some things that are just kind of slow moving. And they need some time. And you can ask yourself, like, do you have time? Like, am I in a major rush here on the spiritual path or in life? Or do I need to get rid of this right away? Like this sadness will probably teach you a lot about unconditional compassion. Like the willingness to be with something for a long time. For it to release on or in God's time. On its time. Does that feel true?
Yeah. It's recently I kind of realized that I do have the capacity to feel again, and having that, I guess, courage to face the demons just has applied all this inertia to just get it out, get it over with as soon as possible.
Yeah. And that's not love. Like love doesn't push. Love is all the time in the world. Like all the time. So love is more like, hey, I'll sit with you as long as it takes. As long as it takes. As long as it takes. And if you look at the place within us that pushes, like you can close your eyes, we can all play along again. Most people can find a pusher man in us. And if you look at that pusher, like if you can find the pusher in you. So what's the emotion connected with the pusher? Is it happiness and joy? Like, are we pushing from a super happy place?
No.
No, what's the emotion? This very specific emotion comes with pushing.
Frustration, maybe.
Okay. And feel under the frustration.
Anger.
Anger. Yeah. 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 And if you ask the anger, what do you need? Again, a loving, compassionate way. Yeah. Yeah. It's just a willingness to feel that. And to let that flow through you. And if you notice, it's not so bad to feel that anger, is it? Actually feels kind of good, doesn't it?
It does.
Yeah, it feels really good. It's a funny thing. Spiritual people hate anger. And it's like anger is such a worthy thing, such a
Yeah.
valid thing to feel. And, and it's just saying, hey, I'm here too. I'm here too.
Mhm.
And the willingness to meet this with love. And I tell you, like the gifts you get from feeling anger are so huge. Like people classify anger as such a bad thing, but you start feeling it and opening to it. You discover how big you are, how powerful you are, how bright you are. It's very helpful in getting you embodied. Brings up a quality of fearlessness. And it also brings up such a quality of tenderness. Like when you sit with anger and you really feel it, there's such a tenderness that comes forward and compassion. Like anger is it's a tantric doorway. And so I encourage you to open to it or continue to do so. Yeah. Yeah. So good to see you. Yeah. All right. We'll do one question on email just so I don't forget this. This is a tough question. It's from Misha. Misha writes, over 2/3 of my life has been lived with chronic illness. I've been disabled for almost 3 decades. Some of this time I have been profoundly ill. Even if some of my conditions can be managed and potentially improved, others, such as late-stage Lyme disease, are both chronic and progressive. I also have a history of complex PTSD. While healing is possible, no final cure of the effects can be had. The final stage of healing PTSD is learning how to live with my past and the ways its residual effects manifest in my present life. In short, these, as well as other aspects of my humanity, cannot be fixed. She puts fixed in quotes. Would you please speak to ways of honoring these human aspects of life? Part of balancing these with awareness of my divine nature seems to be found learning to live with the broken places, with that which cannot be fixed. Yeah, I mean, like even though Misha's going through this, like just say in adulthood, like we'll all come to this at some point in life, like the end of life. Like when you just start getting old, like when I was a kid, I worked in a nursing home when I was 14. And I just saw real clearly, like, this is how life tends to end for most people, unless you die young, but you're gonna die in, like a hospital bed, a bunch of tubes hooked up to us, breathing, oxygen and all these medications and aches and pains and like no one's getting out of this world alive. Like and so how do we live with this? And whether we have to live with it like the majority of our life, or just in the last, 2 or 3 years of our life, like we're going to come to terms with this. Like I can speak about acceptance, but what really is acceptance? Like, I don't want to say some BS flowery thing. I mean, in a sense, I can say a real similar thing to what Misha's writing. Like, most of my adult life has been lived with chronic pain in one form or another, whether I had back pain, head injury, and now I have long COVID. It's like, what the heck? This world, it's hard, and having a body is hard. It's hard. And so what I've found is the more loving I am toward my human self, it makes everything easier. Like when I love my human self, my consciousness expands, and there can be an ongoing, consistent, embodied sense of freedom, or experience of freedom. But if I fight with my human self, which is the opposite of acceptance, my consciousness contracts. And this tends to be true for everyone. If you fight with your human experience, your consciousness contracts. Because your consciousness contracts when you step out of reality. And so, like, it's true, like you're in a lot of pain here. I understand that. So we meet pain with compassion. Physical compassion, mental compassion, emotional compassion. By that, I mean, I'm physically compassionate toward my body right now. Give myself lots of rest, lots of downtime. And I'm mentally compassionate with my mind and my emotional nature. So the more you can come into contact with your divine nature and let go into your divine nature, trust in your divine nature, step into it, embody it, then the physical experience of the human body is much easier, even if it's hard. Let me see if I can say that differently. Like, let's say one is enlightened and one has cancer. Your experience of the cancer is going to be much different than if one is not awake. Doesn't mean that the physical pain will completely disappear or anything like that, but the greater your consciousness expands, things tend to bother you less. But let me clarify, you absolutely will feel more, but they'll disturb you less. And so it's one of the great gifts of the spiritual path is the further you walk, the greater your consciousness expands, and the easier it is to relate to our imperfect humanity. And Misha, in this case, I'm going to use your word, the broken humanity. So the more you open to your heart, the more you open to love, the more you open to peace, the more fully you'll be able to love the parts of you that are quote unquote broken. And because your identification will be beyond the body, beyond the mind, then the body and the mind won't be your entire world. But when your body and mind are your entire world and something happens to the body and mind, well, it's a feeling of just total despair and dread. There's individuals who I've read about who've woken up in concentration camps and like in work camps, like in Siberia and these types of things. And I was just so utterly touched that these individuals, their experience of life was not limited by the utter hell they were living through. And of course, in a relative way, it was absolutely limited, but from their lips, they said, hey, like there's something here. Something here. That's beyond it all. And so please, by all means, like with the human body, I encourage you never to give up on healing. A great teacher for that is Dr. Joe Dispenza. Like that's his whole spiritual teaching world it's all about healing. And he has miracle after miracle, how people healed through following the path that he teaches. And I think he had a broken back or something crazy and healed himself. And so don't give up on that anything can happen. But also, it's important to acknowledge too, from a place of love, like sometimes life is just tough. And this was the Buddha's first teaching. I mean, this is the Four Noble Truths. Like this is it. Life is dukkha, life is suffering, life is hard. There's a path. And through the path, you can experience a greater sense of freedom and compassion toward your human experience. Like, I don't know, like given what this poor body of mine has been through, like I don't know if I'd be alive if I hadn't discovered spirituality. And because of it, I have a real funny experience of a body that a lot of times is in great pain and a consciousness that's in utter bliss. It's a very confusing thing. It's kind of a fun, it's almost like a hilarious joke of how good I feel in my consciousness and how rough sometimes my body feels. Not always, but sometimes. Misha, my heart's with you. My heart's with you. Okay. Okay. I think I'm gonna call it a night. I'm feeling been a little bit cooked myself. So I apologize, Aaron, I can't get to your question. Maybe next time. I'm going to remind everyone, 2 retreats coming up, June 10th through 12th online. I hope you all can come. July 10th through the 15th at Kripalu Institute. I hope you all can come. And check the schedule because there's going to be a lot of little glitches in the schedule with me traveling in the coming weeks. But the glitches will start around Memorial Day weekend. That's the end of the month for those Europeans in the room, the end of May. So much love to each of you. I feel so honored to be with you in this way. Good night, everyone. We'll see you next time.